On what seemed like a routine patrol, officers jammed in cars had no idea they were being hunted.
Before we dive into this life-changing story, hit that subscribe button, like, and comment.
What the? They're shooting at us! Get down! We're not letting them take us down. Not today. Then let's end this, now! Too close. That's no coincidence. What are they doing? They're trying to run us off the road.
Insane footage of a coordinated attack on a patrol police van. This is not a coincidence. What happened on that dark stretch of highway was not random chance, not reckless driving, not a misunderstanding. It was a calculated, deliberate, and chilling example of how far some men will go when they believe a mission is worth dying for. The date was August 22, 2025. The time was just after 10 p.m. Two men, both private security contractors, were traveling in a reinforced patrol police sedan. For the sake of their safety, we will call them Mark and David. Mark, the driver, was a seasoned veteran, a man whose life had been forged in combat zones across the world. Calm, analytical, and aware of every detail around him, he had lived long enough to recognize when danger was stalking close. David, his partner, was younger, less experienced, but sharp and intuitive. Together, they made a capable team. They were not out for a casual drive. They were wearing level 3 body armor, and their vehicle had been prepared for hostile situations. That alone tells us something critical. They expected trouble. Yet even they could not predict how quickly the ordinary rhythm of the night would turn into an ambush designed with military precision. For 7 miles, a black sedan had been pacing them. Never too close, never falling behind, always in sight. It moved like a shadow, steady, deliberate, patient. Mark noticed it first. Men like him always do. His instincts sharpened the moment he realized the vehicle had no reason to be there, no reason to maintain that exact distance. A sixth sense whispered the truth. They were being followed. The presence of that black sedan was not random. It was the spotter, a decoy, a distraction. Its real purpose was to set the stage for something else. And then it happened. The sound of a high-performance engine cutting through the night, growing louder, sharper, until it became impossible to ignore. A red sports bike appeared, carving through the sparse traffic with precision that spoke of skill and intent. It moved with the fluidity of a predator, first overtaking the patrol sedan in a blur, then falling back, testing the waters. That was the first sign that the target had been confirmed. The motorcycle rider was not just a driver. He was an asset, an attacker, a weapon in motion. The choreography was impossible to miss once you knew what to look for. The motorcycle pulled back. The black sedan slowed in unison. They were communicating, syncing their movements, waiting for the right moment. This was not improvisation. It was a plan. A coordinated ambush on a dark highway. Inside the patrol car, David began to sense the weight of what was unfolding. He was restless, scanning the mirrors, adjusting his body armor, his voice low and tense. "They're tailing us. Too close," he muttered. Mark didn't respond with panic. He already knew. His grip on the steering wheel tightened, his eyes locked on the mirrors. Then David voiced the words that sealed the reality of their situation. "That's no coincidence." And he was right. This was not coincidence. This was choreography. This was a kill box closing in around them. The strategy was textbook. The black sedan boxed them from behind, controlling the flow of traffic so no one could interfere. The motorcycle positioned itself at the front, the tip of the spear. Even the surrounding civilian vehicles became unwilling pawns, their positions manipulated to restrict the patrol sedan's options. Mark and David were being corralled, trapped, cut off from every possible escape route. Mark knew the signs. He had seen ambushes before, overseas in war zones. He had studied this playbook. And he also knew there was no reasoning with attackers who moved with this level of coordination. These were not opportunists or reckless aggressors. These were trained operatives carrying out a mission. Then, the moment came. The motorcycle surged forward, engine screaming as it accelerated directly into their path. There was no hesitation, no attempt to swerve or avoid collision. The rider aimed himself at the patrol sedan with deadly intent, transforming his body and machine into a living projectile. The impact was devastating. Glass exploded, metal screamed as it tore apart, and the motorcycle crumpled into the patrol car's frame. In that one suicidal maneuver, chaos had been unleashed. The goal was not simply to stop the car. It was to disorient, to overwhelm, to break open the defenses so the black sedan could close in and finish the job. Yet the attackers made one critical miscalculation. They underestimated Mark. Where most drivers would have panicked, frozen, or lost control, Mark's instincts kicked in. His years of combat experience, his training, his iron discipline, everything converged in that instant. Instead of braking, instead of surrendering to the chaos, he pressed harder on the accelerator. Even as glass rained down around him, even as the wreckage of the motorcycle jammed into the car, Mark refused to stop. That single decision saved both their lives. By maintaining speed, by pushing forward rather than giving the attackers the satisfaction of a disabled vehicle, Mark disrupted their plan. The black sedan, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike, suddenly lost its window. Instead of a stationary target, it was left with a moving one, faster, more determined, and angrier than ever. David, shaken but alive, clung to the reality of what had just happened. The patrol car roared forward, broken but not beaten. In that moment, the ambush had failed, not because the attackers lacked precision, but because their target refused to submit. And yet, this was only the beginning, because the questions left behind were as heavy as the wreckage still embedded in the patrol car. Who were these men willing to sacrifice themselves in such a brutal attack? What were Mark and David protecting that demanded this level of violence? And most chilling of all, if this was the opening move, what was the end game? The footage gives us the facts. We see the pursuit. We see the crash. We see the survival. But it cannot answer the deeper mysteries. It cannot tell us who orchestrated this or why they were willing to go so far. What we do know is that this ambush was not improvised. It was professional, it was precise, and it was coordinated at a level that should terrify anyone who thinks highway violence is limited to random acts of road rage. This was something else. This was organized. Mark and David escaped the first strike. But survival in that moment was only the start of a longer, more dangerous night. The attackers had failed to bring them down with the motorcycle, but the black sedan was still out there, and its mission was not yet complete. The ambush had opened the game. The hunt was still underway. And for Mark and David, the nightmare was only beginning. The crash should have ended everything. A motorcycle turned into a missile. A patrol sedan turned into a coffin on wheels. By all logic, Mark and David should not have survived the first wave of that ambush. Yet they did. And their survival changed the game. When Mark pressed the accelerator instead of the brake, when he chose forward momentum over surrender, he tore the playbook in half. The black sedan, the hunters waiting to finish what the motorcycle had started, were suddenly forced into improvisation. And improvisation is dangerous, even for trained killers. But let us not forget, the attack had only begun. The goal was never a single strike. It was attrition. It was pursuit. It was pressure applied until the target could no longer endure. The patrol car was damaged, its windshield shattered, its frame bent from the impact. But it was still moving. That fact alone was enough to shift the balance of power, if only slightly. David would later recall the moments after the crash with words that still carry the weight of shock. I remember the glass. It was everywhere. I couldn't even see straight. My ears were ringing. But Mark never let go of the wheel. He didn't even look at me. He just drove, like the car was alive and he wasn't going to let it die. That determination is the reason they lived, because the black sedan was not finished. The attackers accelerated. Their headlights loomed larger, closing the distance. For 7 miles they had stalked, patient and calculating. Now they were predators in full chase. Mark's military instincts were alive in every decision he made. He knew the sedan behind them had speed, numbers, and momentum. He knew their patrol car, now compromised, would not hold up in a prolonged fight. His only advantage was unpredictability. And unpredictability, in the hands of someone trained, is often the difference between life and death. As the black sedan closed in, Mark swerved hard across lanes, forcing civilian traffic into chaos. Horns blared. Tires screeched. Innocent drivers swerved out of the way, unaware that they were now part of a larger war playing out on asphalt. From the passenger seat, David described it like being inside a storm. Everything was noise. Tires, horns, people yelling. But behind all of it, I could still hear that engine, the black car coming for us. It didn't matter what we did. It was locked on. The pursuit stretched on for nearly 3 more miles. At times, the patrol car and the black sedan were separated only by inches. At others, Mark managed to pull ahead, weaving through traffic with surgical precision. But always, the black sedan returned. Relentless. Unshaken. It was during this chase that something else became clear. This was not the work of amateurs. Their movements were too precise, their aggression too coordinated. Even when cut off by traffic, even when forced into near collisions, the black sedan regained its position with terrifying control. Mark recognized it immediately. He had seen this kind of pursuit before, in combat zones, in convoy ambushes, in the moments when survival hinged on instinct rather than firepower. These were not gang members looking for revenge. These were professionals executing a mission, and missions like this do not exist without purpose. Why? That question haunted both men as much as the chase itself. Why would anyone orchestrate an attack with this level of planning, with this level of sacrifice? What could possibly be so valuable that a man would willingly turn his motorcycle into a weapon, sacrificing his life in the process? For Mark, the question didn't matter in that moment. His focus was survival. His voice on the dash recording was calm, almost detached. "Stay sharp," he said. "We're not out yet. Eyes open. Don't lose focus." David's voice, by contrast, carried the weight of fear, but also a spark of defiance. "They want us alive. That's the only reason they haven't hit harder. But if they can't take us alive, they'll kill us here. You know that, right?" Mark didn't answer. Some truths don't need words. As the chase thundered on, a new tactic emerged. The black sedan attempted to overtake them, swerving alongside the patrol car at deadly speeds. The intention was clear: force them off the road, box them into a fatal collision, or pin them into a kill zone where escape would be impossible. Mark responded with precision, slamming the wheel to edge them away, keeping the sedan from completing the maneuver. The patrol car jolted violently, metal scraping, sparks flying. But still, they stayed on the road. David described the sensation as a war of wills. It felt like they weren't even driving cars. It was like two predators trying to rip each other apart. Every move they made, Mark countered. Every time they tried to box us, he slipped out. I don't know how we were still alive, But I knew it couldn't last forever. And then, for a brief moment, the chase shifted. The black sedan fell back, its headlights retreating into the distance. Silence settled in the car, heavy and suffocating. David's breathing was loud, ragged. Mark's hands remained steady on the wheel, but he knew better than to believe it was over. In his own words, years later, he described the sensation. "I've been in enough fights to know the silence is worse than the noise. When they disappeared, I didn't feel relief. I felt dread. Because if I couldn't see them, it meant they were planning something bigger." That instinct proved correct. The black sedan had not abandoned the pursuit. It had repositioned. It had shifted the strategy. 2 minutes later, new headlights appeared, not behind, but ahead. Another vehicle. Another player entering the board. The realization hit instantly. This wasn't a single team ambush. This was a network. Multiple vehicles, multiple operatives, all converging on one objective. The black sedan had forced them forward, herding them straight into another trap. David's voice trembled as he recalled that moment. "I thought we were done. I really did. When I saw those headlights, I thought, this is it. This is how it ends." But once again, Mark refused to surrender. He pressed the accelerator harder, eyes locked forward, searching for gaps, searching for chances, searching for survival. And in that decision, in that raw refusal to give in, he bought them more time. The highway became a battlefield. Civilian cars swerved desperately, some narrowly avoiding collisions, others forced onto the shoulder. The new vehicle ahead swerved violently, attempting to block them. At the same time, the black sedan closed in from behind, completing the kill box. Mark's options dwindled. Left meant collision. Right meant a ditch. Slowing meant certain death. So he chose the only option left, acceleration. The patrol car roared, engine screaming under the strain, broken glass rattling like shrapnel. Mark threaded the needle between the new vehicle and a civilian car, scraping paint, tearing mirrors, but breaking free. For a moment, the trap collapsed, but the danger had only escalated. Because now, Mark and David knew the truth. This was not the work of a single team, not even two. This was larger. This was coordinated across multiple units, designed with layers of contingency. And still, the question burned in their minds. Why? Why were two men in a patrol car worth all of this? Mark never let himself answer in the moment. His only mission was forward motion. But David later admitted that the thought never left him. "I kept asking myself, who are we really fighting? This wasn't random. This wasn't some gang. Somebody sent them. Somebody gave the order. And that meant somebody, somewhere, wanted us dead more than they wanted their men alive." That realization is what makes this attack more chilling than the footage itself. Because the footage shows chaos, but it does not reveal purpose. Purpose is hidden in the shadows of whoever orchestrated this attack, and purpose means power. Mark and David survived the second trap. They survived the opening wave. But they were still being hunted, still being funneled into the unknown. The ambush had failed. The chase had failed. But the mission of their attackers had not yet ended. For Mark and David, the night was far from over. The highway still stretched ahead. The black sedan was still behind. And the question of why would only grow darker as the pursuit unfolded. The silence never lasts. In combat, in life, in moments where death hovers just outside your window, silence is never safety. Silence is strategy. And Mark knew that better than anyone. The black sedan was no longer tailing them as closely as before. Its headlights had dipped. Its pursuit had grown faint. But Mark's gut told him what experience had already taught him 100 times over. When the enemy disappears, it is not retreat. It is repositioning. David would later describe that quiet stretch as the most terrifying moment of the night. I wanted to believe it was over. I kept looking at the mirrors, hoping the lights wouldn't come back. But deep down, I knew. Mark didn't even look relieved. His face was like stone. He knew they were setting us up for something worse. And he was right. 2 miles later, the trap tightened again. This time, the attack was not from behind. Headlights appeared in the distance, weaving erratically through traffic, moving fast, too fast to be ordinary. Another vehicle, another player. The realization hit hard. This wasn't just one car or one bike. This was a network, a coordinated team operating with layers of redundancy. If one attempt failed, another was waiting ahead. If the motorcycle's sacrifice couldn't stop them, if the black sedan couldn't pin them, then reinforcements would take over. This was not road rage. This was a mission. The second vehicle accelerated toward them, closing the distance with alarming speed. Meanwhile, the black sedan re-emerged in the rearview mirror, lights blazing brighter, pushing harder, more aggressive than ever. Mark and David were caught between jaws. Mark's mind shifted into combat rhythm, his hands steady, his breathing controlled, his voice calm. "They're hurting us," he muttered, almost to himself. "They're closing the box." David's voice was sharper, edged with panic, but also awareness. "They want us alive. That's why they haven't rammed us yet. But if they can't get us alive, they'll take us dead." Those words were not paranoia. They were truth. Because the tactics unfolding on that highway spoke of capture as much as elimination. Whoever had orchestrated this didn't want just destruction. They wanted possession. They wanted control of something, or someone, inside that patrol car. The new vehicle ahead swerved violently, cutting across both lanes, trying to force them into a fatal choice: slow down and face the black sedan, or crash headlong into its blockade. Mark refused both options. With a controlled burst of acceleration, he threaded the patrol car through a gap so narrow that David later admitted he closed his eyes, convinced they were about to die. The car scraped metal, mirrors shattered, but somehow they emerged on the other side, still alive, still moving. David's first-person account captures the desperation. "I could smell the rubber burning. I could taste the glass in the back of my throat. And I thought, how much longer can this last? How much longer can one man keep us alive?" But Mark, he just kept driving, like he'd already decided nothing was going to stop us. But the attackers were relentless. The black sedan surged again, slamming into the patrol car's rear bumper with a sickening jolt. The impact rattled through their bodies, nearly spinning them out of control. Mark fought the wheel, counter-steering with precision honed by years of combat driving. The car fishtailed, then straightened. Still alive, still moving. The black sedan tried again, this time pulling alongside, its passengers visible for the first time, masked, armed, focused. These were not reckless criminals. Their movements were measured, professional. Even at high speeds, their control was unshaken. Mark glanced once, eyes locking on the faces of men who had come for him. He didn't flinch. He didn't panic. His voice, steady and low, carried the weight of certainty. "This isn't their first hunt." David's voice trembled as he whispered back, "Then why us?" The question hung heavy. Why would trained operatives risk their lives in such a violent, public, coordinated attack? What made Mark and David so valuable? No answer came, only more aggression. The black sedan swerved again, trying to force them into a collision with the median. The sound of screeching tires filled the night, sparks showering as metal scraped concrete. Yet Mark refused to yield. Every move they made, he countered. Every trap they set, he found a way out. But survival came at a cost. The patrol car was breaking down. Its frame groaned with every maneuver. Its windshield was gone. Its tires screamed under the pressure. And still, the attackers pressed forward. David would later admit that in those moments, he lost hope. I thought, even if we survive the next minute, we can't survive the next hour. They'll wear us down. The car will give out. And when it does, we're done. But Mark's voice never faltered. Calm, steady, unshaken. Not tonight, he said. Those 2 words became a mantra. Not tonight. For every ramming attempt, for every swerve, for every trap, Mark had an answer. Years of experience, instincts honed in war, and a willpower that refused to yield. And then, just when it seemed the black sedan had committed fully to ending it once and for all, the attack shifted again. The second vehicle reappeared, this time not as a blockade, but as reinforcement. It swerved in beside the black sedan, the 2 vehicles now operating in tandem, pressing harder, faster, deadlier. Mark and David were outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped. The highway became a gauntlet, 2 hostile vehicles pressing them from either side, boxing them in, squeezing them toward disaster. David's voice broke as he recalled that moment. I thought of my family. I thought of my mom. I thought, this is the last night I'll ever see. And then I got angry, really angry, because I realized these men were willing to kill us without even showing their faces. Mark, still steady, muttered words that David never forgot. Then we make them work for it. With that, he executed a maneuver that few could have managed. Waiting for the briefest gap, he slammed the wheel, braking and accelerating in rhythm, forcing the patrol car into a near spin that scraped both enemy vehicles, but bought just enough space to break free. The patrol car roared forward, battered but unbroken. The black sedan and its partner scrambled to recover, but Mark had already opened a gap. For the first time that night, distance stretched between predator and prey. And yet, even as the gap widened, neither man inside the patrol car felt relief. Because they knew the truth. This wasn't over. This wasn't even close. David's voice was heavy as he later explained. They weren't going to stop. I could feel it. No matter how far we got, they'd keep coming. They'd follow us into the city, into the country, anywhere. Because this wasn't about revenge or anger. This was about a mission, and missions don't end until they succeed, or until everyone on the mission is dead. Mark knew it too. His voice was calm, but his words were clear. We're not running from men. We're running from orders. And orders, once given, do not stop. That was the reality of that night. A reality more terrifying than the crash, the chase, or the violence itself. Because if men are willing to sacrifice themselves in such a coordinated, relentless attack, it means only one thing. What Mark and David carried, whether information, evidence, or something else entirely, was worth dying for, and worth killing for. The highway stretched on. The night deepened. The attackers regrouped. Mark and David were still alive, but their nightmare was far from over. The ambush had failed. The chase had escalated, but the mission was still alive. And as long as the mission lived, so did the hunt. The footage eventually came to an end, but the story did not. What began as a sudden ambush on a dark stretch of road spiraled into one of the most harrowing pursuits ever caught on tape. The patrol car, scarred with bullet holes, limped its way to a halt after miles of fighting just to stay on the road. Smoke curled from the hood, glass was shattered, and the interior was littered with fragments of steel and plastic. Both officers were alive, but barely. Their uniforms were torn, their breathing heavy, and their nerves shaken to the core. The red sedan? It was gone. Disappeared into the night like a predator melting into the shadows. But its trail was far from erased. When backup units arrived, they found the scene like something out of a war zone. Tire marks scorched into the asphalt, bullet casings scattered along the chase route, and a patrol vehicle that looked more like a battlefield relic than a functioning cruiser. I remember looking at the report and thinking, this wasn't random. The way the attackers struck, the precision of their moves, the timing of their ambush, It was coordinated. They weren't just trying to intimidate, they were trying to eliminate. Investigators pieced together fragments of the night. Surveillance cameras picked up glimpses of the red sedan weaving through traffic minutes before the ambush. Witnesses described hearing rapid gunfire echoing through the streets. Some said they saw sparks flying from the pavement as bullets skipped across the asphalt. But there was one detail that still chills me. A neighbor, who lived along the chase route, reported seeing a figure leaning halfway out of the red sedan's window, firing relentlessly. His description was cold, almost detached, as if the shooter showed no hesitation. No mercy. The officers, against all odds, survived. Their quick response, their training, and perhaps sheer willpower kept them alive long enough to fight back and force the attackers to retreat. But survival came at a cost. Scars, both physical and psychological, would stay with them long after the chase was over. When I replay the footage in my mind, I can't help but imagine what it felt like inside that cruiser. The deafening roar of gunfire, the violent jolt of metal ramming against metal, the sight of sparks, glass, and darkness all blending together in a single chaotic storm. And yet, they endured. That is what makes this footage more than just a violent clip on a screen. It is a testament to resilience, to courage, and to the brutal reality that law enforcement sometimes faces. The attack was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a larger investigation, one that revealed a network operating in the shadows, planning hits with military precision. But that is a story for another time. For now, what remains is the haunting reality of what those two officers endured, and the insane footage that captured every second of it.
If this story meet your interest, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below and tell me about a time someone saw your worth when others didn't, or about a time you chose to see someone else's value when the world told you to look away. Subscribe for more stories that will challenge your assumptions, touch your heart, and remind you that the most powerful force in the universe isn't money or fame or success. It's love. It's courage. It's the decision to treat every person you meet as if they might be the hero of their own incredible story.